Hey, what's up? I'm Michael Riscica from YoungArchitect.com. People have asked me to make a video explaining what is going on with NCARB right now. And I said, no, I don't want to do it. I don't want to do it. And more people have asked me. I've had 5 different people ask me in the past, I don't know, 4 or 5 days, Mike, will you please make a video explaining what the situation with NCARB right now? And so here it is. This is the video that I didn't want to make. I want to talk about what's happening with NCARB. Real quick too, last night I made a list. I typed out everything. I made myself some notes. So I'm going to read what I wrote and what's happening. It was easier for me to get all my thoughts in one spot. If you don't know who I am, I'm a licensed architect in the state of Oregon. I run a program called the ARE Boot Camp that's coached over 1,000 people with their architect exams. I run the ARE Facebook group with 8,000 members. It's a very active community of people talking about the architect exam all day and night long. It just goes nonstop. It's how I volunteer. I spend hours every day running this group. It's how I volunteer. It's how I know a lot of this stuff, is because I'm talking and watching and seeing what's happening with people in this community. And last thing about me is I'm a passionate advocate for the next generation of architects. I don't know, visit youngarchitect.com. All right, let's talk about NCARB. The goal is to explain what's happening with NCARB. So before we get started, I want to kind of lay this out. I want to talk about the timeline of events that I've observed happening since the beginning of the coronavirus situation. At the end, after we go through the timeline, I have some thoughts and takeaways that I want to share with you guys. And probably one of the most important things is I'm not going to call out in this video. I'm not going to call out NCARB staff by name. I'm not personally attacking people. This is business. This isn't personal. And Young Architect's got a big following, and it just wouldn't be fair to be calling people out by name. So I've chosen not to use names and to just call it NCARB. Next, there's links in the description below. There's a lot of links to there's this blog post and that thing and this thing. So I'll put links to everything I talk about in this video in the description. All right, so to give this video some context, today's date is June 4th, 2020. It's 11:29 a.m. This NCARB situation keeps unfolding pretty quickly, and I hope this video actually becomes outdated pretty quickly. So let's get started. Let's talk about the beginning of the timeline. So as coronavirus started to get worse, it was kind of a beginning of the year, I would say everything was pretty much normal until middle to end of March, really depending on where you live. Parts of America started to shut down sooner than other parts of America. So exams started to get canceled. NCARB, right out of the gate, gave everyone a 6-month rolling clock extension, and then like a week later they came back and extended it to 9 months. So they gave everyone this rolling clock extension. So if your exams were going to expire, that will hold you over at least until we figure out what's going on. I thought that was pretty commendable to just say, don't worry about your exams expiring, we'll take care of this. Weeks go by. There's a lot of drama with the NCARB customer service. I would say, they weren't really communicating. They were putting fires out and dealing with canceled exams and seat credits and typical NCARB, the stuff that they deal with. At a certain point, NCARB put out an email asking people to reschedule for after June 1st. After June 1st, testing centers would be operating at 50% capacity. Okay, so they said, we need everyone to reschedule your exams for after June 1st. They also explained that there's the CISA essential exams will be a priority over the ARE. I didn't really think much about it. Sounds reasonable to me. We'll come back to the essential thing later. So at this point, I keep telling people to just be patient with NCARB. They'll figure it out. NCARB struggles when a national health crisis isn't going on. And so at this point, the curve was just going up and up, and everyone everywhere was confused with where we're going to be in, 2 weeks, let alone 2 months from now. There was a lot of uncertainty at the time. And so I said, be patient, be patient, give them some space to think, back off a little bit. And eventually NCARB announces that they're going to do a webinar. I thought it was a little late by this point because things just kept escalating, but okay, great. They're going to do a webinar a week from now. And so that shut everyone up for a week. Let's see what NCARB has to say. So they do the webinar on April 30th. They announced, there's going to be, because of the coronavirus situation, there's no testing in May. Prometric testing centers are shutting down across America for the month of May. June 1st, testing will resume at 15%. You may need to reschedule. Okay, we already knew that. They announced ARI 5.1, and they said remote proctoring. That was something that everyone came out like, when are we going to be able to take these tests at home? I'm sick of going to the testing center and blah, blah, blah. We should be testing at home. And so they announced we're going to do remote proctoring, and everyone got super excited about it. But they offered no details, no timeline, and basically said that they're just thinking about it. They're thinking about it. And my response to that was, who cares? We need, I wish you had a solution, but telling us you're thinking about a solution wasn't really an answer. NCARB kept talking about rolling clocks and seat credits. They kept going over it over and over and over again. One of the things they said in the webinar that was interesting, they said no refunds. NCARB they don't do refunds. They're not set up to do refunds. That didn't make people happy to hear. They mentioned the ARE as an essential. If people have to take a doctor has to take an exam because of the COVID situation, ARE might get pushed to the back of the line or something like that. Okay, we understand. I don't think anyone had a problem with that. But the webinar went off the rails kind of in the middle towards the end because people were getting frustrated. They weren't taking the hard questions around the 5.0 software crashing, testing accommodations, NCARB yearly fees being paused. People kept being persistent with that. If we can't offer your services, then why do we have to keep paying you? And then the low pass rates on PPD, PDD. Then I don't know how this question got through. They answered the question. Someone asked the question. They answered. It said, "Can NCARB lower the seat credit price?" And one of the people said, "There's a customer service person." They go, "Yes, seat credit prices are lower." And then they explain that since we're not charging you guys fees to reschedule these exams, technically it's at a lower price point than it would have been if we didn't do the favor and not charge you those fees on those exams we canceled. So people got pretty upset with that, and they were pretty upset after the webinar. There was a lot of comments on the NCARB's blog post, on the YouTube video, kind of addressing a lot of the stuff that they talked about in the webinar. People were upset. They didn't really share any information on the webinar, except letting the cat out of the bag around 5.1. It was the first time we ever heard of it. Okay, so a couple days later, NCARB releases a 2-part blog post answering all the unanswered questions. And it's a lot of the same stuff around rolling clocks and seat credit pricing and refunds and stuff like that. It wasn't really anything new, but it was interesting on the part 2. They actually addressed the low passing rates of PPD and PDD. And what they said is that they think the problem with PPD, PDD is on the candidate's education and maybe our lack of experience. And you should read it yourself. I got really upset. I left a comment explaining the problem with PPD, PDD is the scope. The scope of this exam is freaking huge. It's not 2 tests, it's 5 tests. It's a structures exam, it's a building systems exam, it's a code exam, it's a materials detailing exam, and it's even a professional practice exam. It's not 2 tests, it's 5 tests disguised as 2 tests. And I said it's kind of disappointing to see them pointing the finger at our NAB accredited degrees, and many of us who are struggling with those exams have completed their experience program. So that was frustrating. But anyway, so no one tests in May, but lots of people are studying. There's nothing else to do. They're scheduling exams. What was weird was availability for scheduling exams was doing weird stuff. Suddenly there was no dates available at the testing center. Sometimes there was lots of dates, like a day later. So what ended up happening, I thought this was funny too, is that ARE candidates started to become friends with the people who work at Prometric customer service. Prometric customer service, I guess everyone went to work from home. And so all these people were working in their apartments, working remote, like, I guess, what is it called? Like kind of logging in remotely into the Prometric computers. And they were really trying to be helpful with a lot of candidates. Someone said that one of the Prometric people allowed them to they looked up all the testing centers around the New York City area to help them find an availability somewhere in Long Island, Connecticut, New Jersey, Westchester, whatever. So Prometric was actually really helpful with people. The end of May, Prometric put out an announcement around testing centers being essential and non-essential. I'll come back to this in a minute. As June 1st gets closer, suddenly more exams are getting canceled for June and July. on like a rapid pace, rapid fire, as we're getting closer to taking these exams. June 1st hits, and it seems like everyone is getting their exams canceled. And a lot of times too, sometimes it's 2 or 3 days before. There's no test date availability until the fall or 8 hours away. Now, people start flipping out because they have been studying for a very long time. There are people that are ready to take these exams right before the pandemic started, and they missed the cutoff. And now here we are, weeks, almost like month and a half later, and now they're 2 days before they're expecting to walk in that testing center, and 2 days before they find out they can't take that test, and people are going bananas. A petition gets started. People got frustrated. They put up a petition. I signed it. You should visit the petition. Last time I checked, last night, they had over 600 signatures, and people, really sharing their frustrations with NCARB. This is when things started to get weird. It was a couple days ago. Is in the Facebook group, I'm learning that NCARB customer service has told several different ARE candidates that the reason they're getting their exams canceled is because NCARB chose not to enroll in the Prometric Essential Client Program. This was the first time I heard of this. Prometric's got this program called the Essential Client Program. And people who want to schedule exams whose organizations did enroll in the Prometric Essential Client Program have the ability to take a test date away from ARE candidates because they are not enrolled, because NCARB is not enrolled in this program. So ARE test dates have become a lower priority for test takers whose organizations aren't enrolled in this program. And they kind of told us that, it said if a doctor working on COVID stuff needs to take a test, you might get bumped for some of these essential services, and they might be a more essential client than you are. So that's fair. But where things got even weirder is we started to Google the Prometric Essential Client Program, and Prometric put out a list of all the organizations that are on it and have signed up for this program. And there's a lot of medical. There's lots of medical professions on there, but there's also a lot of professions on there who are not medical and who do not work with the health, safety, and welfare of the public. I got a quick list. So the American Concrete Institute made the list. The certification for professional dog trainers, certified public accountants, the Gambling Counselor Certification Board, Construction Specifications Institute made it. The American Welding Society, the Food Marketing Institute, Health and Wellness Coaches, the National Roofing Contractors. And so people started to get worried. And, Prometric's telling us that if someone wants to take a professional dog training exam, that they have the ability to take your test date and you will automatically just be rescheduled. So people started asking on the NCARB community, why isn't the ARE essential, and why aren't we a part of this program? And so NCARB very quickly fired back on their community doing damage control, telling us that the ARE isn't essential. This is their words. They said the ARE is not considered essential as defined by the U.S. Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency. This is out of our control at NCARB. And then, and actually, the situation they're talking about is Texas. Texas, they started to say that it was about Texas, but it seems that Prometric is telling us that it's because NCARB is not a part of the Essential Program, their Essential Client Program. It's not a Texas thing. It's not a bigger government thing saying that, is architecture considered an essential profession? It's not what it's about. This is about NCARB signing up for Prometric's program to be an essential testing client. So people are going bananas in the Facebook group about having their exams canceled and all of this not being essential enough. Is NCARB sticking up for us? Why is it Prometric telling us this? All right, so on June 2nd, NCARB decides to do a webinar with the state of New York. It's their standard NCARB webinar. Let's outreach. Let's explain to education experience and exams and kind of talk about the steps with getting licensed. But in the middle of the webinar, someone asked the question while they were in the middle of talking about AXP or something. They asked why Prometric told them NCARB decided not to be on the Prometric Essential list, but many other organizations who do not work with the health, safety, and welfare of the public have made this list and are now considered more essential. And in a very uncomfortable way, the person that was speaking, she stumbled and very awkwardly just avoided the question. And it was uncomfortable to watch. And then another person from NCARB stepped in to kind of help her out. And he said, it's not NCARB's job. NCARB's job is to regulate the profession of architecture. It's not to be an advocate. And it's not to be, advocating with whether architecture should or shouldn't be essential. That's really the job of the AIA and the state boards. And I agree with him. It's not NCARB's job to be lobbying and being a public advocate. It's their job to be regulators. But the more I thought about it, the more I started to get upset. And this is when things even got worse, because when they very awkwardly, uncomfortably avoided just answering this question, people just really started, it amplified their emotions and they started to get more worried. So I ended up, I wrote a heated post on the NCARB community about this. If it's NCARB's job to regulate, not advocate, was the AIA, did the AIA have an opportunity to advocate when NCARB, had to make a decision if we were or weren't going to participate in this program? And the more I thought about it, I said, in the context of advocacy and regulation, did NCARB just throw ARE candidates in under the bus, knowingly opting out of this program, not advocating for us because, architect exam's not essential? So, I don't know, take a look at what I wrote about that. But, the Facebook group's going off the hook. People are getting crazy. More tests are being canceled. Here we are, was it June 4th? I haven't heard of one ARE candidate taking an exam. So at this point, ARE candidates and myself start contacting the state boards. And I would say that started because NCARB told us they're not our advocates. They're not our advocates. Talk to AIA and your state boards. So we all started contacting the state boards. Most were appreciative of letting them know the issue. Many had no idea this was going on. I made it very clear in my communication with the boards that the problem seems to be that NCARB has chosen to not participate in Prometric's essential client program. This is a Prometric problem, not a bigger political arena of architecture being considered essential. This is one of the things that I said, I've heard some people from the AIA, one of the state boards and some of the people at NCARB starting to deflect and pretend that this is about we got to talk to the governor and the politicians and try to get architecture put on the essential list. That's not what it's about. This is about getting NCARB to sign up for Prometric's essential client program. So I kept emphasizing that over and over and over again. But I think some of these states are going on a goose chase trying to solve a problem that wasn't the problem in the first place. The problem is that NCARB's not a part of this program that Prometric put together. Okay, so late yesterday afternoon, NCARB starts emailing people whose exams got canceled, blaming Prometric for the cancellations. They will be allowed to reschedule, and this is interesting. They're telling people that their test fees will be refunded. NCARB finally figured out how to give a refund. They're going to refund you those tests, and you'll be allowed to reschedule, so you'll get your money back. But once again, it's NCARB being a hero in cleaning up Prometric's mess. And that's where we're at with the timeline. There was a summary that I took this from the NCARB community. Someone wrote this one of the ARE candidates wrote this. I'm not going to say her name, but she knows who she is. And I think this beautifully sums up the situation in a nutshell. It says, so in essence, NCARB says talk to Prometric and to the states. The states refer us back to NCARB. Prometric refers us back to NCARB. NCARB says it's Prometric canceling our tests. On one hand, yes, Prometric is the one canceling our tests, but let's see why they are canceling our tests. Prometric is canceling because essential tests are a priority, and NCARB is not listing us as a priority. That's everything I just talked about in a nutshell. All right, so let me share with you some of my thoughts and opinions on all this. First thing is that I think NCARB's failed since day one of this pandemic with communicating. If NCARB, was the slightest bit proactive within their communications, the minute things got weird, people would be a lot more at ease. But right now, they're really worked up on how NCARB's communicating. When NCARB communicates, it works, even if they're bad at it. They're not great communicators, but they're not doing it at all. Next thing is remote proctoring. Who cares? NCARB they can't even offer ARI 5.0. You know, there's problems in these testing centers across America. And, you know, every single day, every time, these computers are crashing. The documents are slow to open. The pictures that they're asking us to look at and answer questions about, people can't, the resolution is so low. NCARB can't even effectively administer ARI 5.0. And, you know, remote proctoring, what makes you think, if NCARB can't even administer 5.0 in a controlled setting on Prometric's equipment designed to administer exams, what makes you think that NCARB can successfully remotely administer the architect exam in an uncontrolled setting on an ARI candidate's crappy old HP laptop? I don't believe it. And I would say anything that NCARB, what I wrote here, anything that NCARB has ever done involving software and testing has been a disaster. It has. You remember that 4.0 vignette software that was designed in 1997, and here we are in 2018 still using that? You know, 5.0 doesn't work. Remote proctoring, I'll believe it when I see it, and I'll believe it when they have a track record of success. I would say even the calculator inside ARI 5.0 software is a piece of crap. And telling us about remote proctoring without any real substantial answers or solutions or timelines, it's a distraction. It's a complete distraction to get you to shut up. It's not. They'll have a coronavirus vaccine before NCARB figures out remote proctoring. Yeah, remote proctoring thing kind of frustrates me. It was a big distraction and it worked. All right, let's see what else there is. The constant childish blaming of Prometric is embarrassing to watch and it needs to stop. NCARB repeatedly looks like a bunch of cowards, never taking responsibility and always pointing the finger at Prometric. Guys, fucking fire Prometric. Fire them if they are so terrible. You're the one. NCARB's the one that hired them. Or, you know, I would even say, NCARB, why don't you design an exam that can work with, you know, Prometric's tools so we don't keep having, you know, software issues on everyone's exams. ARI candidates pay NCARB a yearly fee, not Prometric. So figure out the Prometric thing, but people are getting really sick and tired of NCARB pointing the finger at at Prometric. So it's frustrating. All right. Every one of these items just gets me angry. All right, here we go. The third. For 1 week now, NCARB has repeatedly dodged answering the question, why are we not a part of the Prometric's Essential Provider Program? Instead, it's being deflected into a larger conversation that is considered at a state level. That's not what this is about. I said this to someone in the Facebook group. I think NCARB got caught with their pants down. I think when this program came along, they said, let's try to save some money. We're not interested or whatever. And then Prometric shared the list of people who did sign up. And then, you know, Prometric's telling us that our exams are being canceled because they didn't sign up. The whole thing's fishy. I don't know what's going on behind the scenes, but, you know, it's weird. I think that this question needs to be answered and more people need to be asking it and not getting distracted with the bigger picture. So while we're talking about all these issues with NCARB, there's a lot of other issues as well before the coronavirus situation happened. And since I didn't want to make this video, what the hell? Let's talk about all the other issues that I see happening with NCARB these days. I've talked a lot about in this video is the software problems with 5.0. NCARB has played dumb. They haven't done a damn thing to fix these software issues, and they just keep blaming Prometric for it. Next thing on this list is PPD-PDD is broken. These exams, I understand that I think they had the best of intentions, but here we are several years later, and we can verifiably say it was easier to pass 4.0 exams than it is to pass these 2 5.0 exams by a lot. I think 5.0 needs to change. I think PPD-PDD needs to turn into 3 exams, and I think PJM and CE need to be consolidated. I have a lot more opinions, but I'll just leave it at that. That's the bigger picture of the changes I think need to happen. All right, the communication problems. NCARB's always been tone deaf with communicating. Remember a year and a half ago when they announced all those people they caught cheating on the architect exam? And they wanted to tell everyone, we caught all these people cheating on the architect exam. And when the way they wrote that email was so bad, thousands of people who got this email from NCARB thought that they were the ones who were in trouble and were the ones that got caught cheating. It was very embarrassing. Their emails are terrible. People get really upset every time some NCARB highlights, look at this guy. He passed all his exams in 6 months. And then they say, how did you do it? And they says, make a plan and stick to it. People get so angry. Anytime NCARB, highlights or tries to, make the architect exam look easy, whether it's 6 months or 7 weeks or whatever, people go bananas because there's a lot of very educated people who have a lot of experience, who've worked really hard at getting past these exams. It's like, I don't know, it just drives them nuts. All right, another issue I see with NCARB is the lack of diversity on the NCARB board of directors. Year after year after year after year. These board of directors are not reflective of the diverse and changing needs of their stakeholders. All right, I'd say too, a lot of people were upset about that cheating incident I just mentioned. NCARB never followed through. They were supposed to create a public ethical database of issues. Maybe I never found it or saw it, but I was interested in learning more about that. NCARB, that was what they were going to create. It never happened. Many people felt that NCARB made such a big deal about the situation, but barely took any action. The people who were licensed in New York, they never lost their architecture licenses. And while yes, that was probably really more up to the state than NCARB. But a year later, it's water under the bridge. NCARB's actually removed all the names of all the people, and people felt that they didn't really take appropriate action on that. Getting into getting into ethics things too, NCARB doesn't really care about ARE candidates pirating ARE prep study materials. I've had 2 situations where the first situation was someone says, I've got a folder, send me a personal email and I'll give you access to this shared Google Drive. It's got, PDF files of, the Ballast book, the Kaplan stuff. My book was in there, Architect's Handbook Professional Practice. I'll share you illegal bootleg PDFs of these. And so I brought it up to NCARB and I said, guys, look what's happening here. My stuff is being ripped off. And so NCARB's like, well, it's not really our jobs. It's really more of the private industries. You guys should go after that. Hire a lawyer and sue these people. And so NCARB put up a post that said, guys, please don't rip off the ARE prep industry. NCARB doesn't endorse this. And then they didn't take it down. It kept going. And then I came back even stronger. I said, take it down. Take it down. You have to take this offline. My product is being stolen and bootlegged by people that didn't pay for it. Take it down. And then finally they took it down. And then there was another situation where someone was just sharing, they posted the link to the Google Drive and it's all there. Which brings me to my next point, is that NCARB community, it's not being monitored or moderated. There's no way to report posts. And, a couple months ago, someone got online after they took the architect exam and they disclosed everything they ever saw around the PJM exam. And people were like, dude, you can't say that. Come on, don't look what's going on. And then finally, I emailed NCARB, and it was like a Thursday or Friday. It sat up there till Monday, till everyone got back in the office. And then finally it came down, and no one said anything about it ever again. But it's not being moderated. And then there's this NCARB-approved provider prep program that I've got a lot of feelings about. NCARB created this program that revolves around one ARE prep provider, and they are the gold standard. And I applied for this program. And they compared me to that publisher. They pretty much said, anything, your product doesn't match and you don't do things the way that they do it and the way we want to see it as NCARB. So, you're not approved a part of this product, this program. And I said, the hell with it. I wasted $2,000. And I said, my attitude since that was, having approval or not of approval from NCARB hasn't stopped me from helping a lot of people pass their exams. This product's got rave reviews. People are verifiably using it and passing their exams. So screw them and their prep provider program. I ended up creating a whole website that's actually for the ARE candidates called areprepreviews.com. It's like Amazon reviews. Let the people who are using the products and paying for them themselves decide if it's helpful or not. The people who reviewed my study materials were not studying for the architect exam. Oh my God, let's see what else. ESA. I think this ESA process, I don't know much about it, but from what I understand, I always ask, why isn't there a database of information? Why does every single person who went to architecture school outside the United States have to pay and duplicate the work of getting all the transcripts and everything duplicated? Why isn't there a database? Why does everyone have to, keep doing the same work? If two people went to architecture school and graduated the same exact year, had all the same professors, both of them would have to go through the same exact process of, transcribing all of the courseworks and transcripts and everything. Why can't they just have a database with all the courseworks and plug that in? It just seems unnecessary. It seems like it's hazing. IPAL's a disaster. I don't care how NCARB measures success. I don't care how they figured out how to skew it and look at it as a success. Talk to the students. Talk to them. I have traveled around America. I can say I have spoken with at least 40 different IPAL students, one-on-one. It's not a success. It's a failure. It's a big failure. So talk to the students. Testing accommodations, our RMS, Ashley Bell Davis had such an awful experience. She was a new mother. She was a nursing mother, and she had such an awful experience trying to get an accommodation. And she says, it wasn't Prometric, it wasn't the state, it was NCARB. NCARB made the process unnecessarily complicated and really drug it out. And she was under a lot of stress and anxiety for dealing with it. And luckily, she was actually one of the people that took her test on one of the last days before testing centers shut down. And boom, she passed her last exam and she's all done. But it was, she's been very vocal about the testing accommodation thing lately. And then to kind of wrap it up, NCARB hasn't done anything to earn the trust of ARE candidates. This entire relationship between NCARB and the ARE community and candidates is just very adversarial. ARE candidates feel disconnected, unheard, and not a part of the process, and unsupported by NCARB. That's what that petition's about. Go read the petition. There's a lot of that in there. We don't feel like we're being appropriately represented or we have any say in anything. It's a completely top-down process. NCARB talks at us, not with us. And so NCARB's, I think you guys got a lot of work to do. I think it feels like we've just been moving backwards. It's 2020, where I don't see progress. And I think what's frustrating for a lot of people is who holds NCARB accountable. No one knows what to do. What do we do? The state boards say they can't do anything. AA can't do anything. Prometric can't do anything. What do we do? And that's part of why I decided to, all right, let's make this video. Let's make this video that I didn't want to make. Let me explain my frustrations. But I'll be honest with you, all I want is I want people to be able to get back into these testing centers. There's a lot of people who've just been really patient. They've, they're following NCARB's, doing what NCARB tells us to do, being patient, dealing with it. And we're at a point where people have lost their patience and they're losing their minds. So please, I just want things to get back to normal. This is what I see. This is what I've seen happening. This is how I feel about some of these things, but I just want people to get back in that testing center. That's all I care about. So I hope this video was helpful for you. Leave a comment below and I'll talk to you later. Take care. Bye.